Hi students, now this is Dr. Nivedha and let us learn a high yield must know topic for MBBS exams, right? So let us start off with a case based question. Now the case goes like this: a 6-month-old infant presented with failure to thrive based on deviation across two major percentiles on standardized growth curves despite normal feeds, right? So his serum calcium was normal. Yes, the serum calcium was normal. Phosphorus and vitamin D were very low. Alkaline phosphatase levels and parathormone levels were very high. And he was diagnosed as a case of nutritional vitamin D deficiency. So now here in this case they have given you the diagnosis also, but they have asked you the reason for all these elevated parameters, right? Abnormal parameters. So why does vitamin D deficiency cause an elevated parathormone and alkaline phosphatase? How is the second question being, how is vitamin D activated? And the third question is, how does vitamin D regulate calcium and phosphorus levels? Yes, so here we are to discuss about vitamin D and its metabolism. So let us now do that. So let us start with discussing the formation of vitamin D and its metabolism, after which we'll be discussing the biochemical effects of vitamin D. So as the session goes, you will be able to understand the reason for all the abnormal parameters that they have given, right? So what is the formation? How does vitamin D get synthesized in your body? So the first thing that you have to remember is 7-dehydrocholesterol. Yes, so you all know vitamin D is a derivative of cholesterol. Yes, so 7-dehydrocholesterol, which is present in the Malpighian layer of your epidermis. Yes, Malpighian layer of your epidermis, that is your skin. So what happens when light falls on it? Yes, when light falls on your skin. When light falls on your skin, the 7-dehydrocholesterol gets converted to secosterol. So what happens in this mechanism? The 7-dehydrocholesterol, you all know cholesterol is made of 4 rings, right? So in that the second ring gets opened up. That is what happens, and that makes the secosterol. So in this, from the secosterol, you have a double bond in between 5 and 6 position. So that double bond gets isomerized and gets converted from its cis position to trans position. So the secosterol gets isomerized to form a cholecalciferol. So what does it form? It forms cholecalciferol. Right. So this cholecalciferol, now you should understand, it is due to the presence of sunlight that it is getting activated. Yes. So during winter seasons you will have reduced synthesis. Yes, during winter seasons you will have reduced synthesis of vitamin D. Also, when there is increased pigmentation, the synthesis becomes reduced. Yes, the synthesis of vitamin D is reduced. Yes, so this is how we synthesize the cholecalciferol. So now that you have to understand, commercially what do they produce? They produce ergosterol. Yes, ergosterol. So all these ergosterol will also undergo this. It becomes an ergocalciferol. Yes, it becomes ergocalciferol. And all the cholecalciferol, you will name it as D3, whereas the ergocalciferol and its derivatives, you name it as D2, vitamin D2, right? So next, how does it get activated? How does it get activated? Now that we have the cholecalciferol moves to the liver. Yes, it moves to the liver. So in the liver, what happens? In the liver, there is the enzyme 25-hydroxylase. Yes, with which hydroxylates at 25th position in the cholecalciferol. And this important points on this 25-hydroxylase is that it's a microsomal enzyme. Yes, it is a monooxygenase. It is a monooxygenase and it needs cytochrome P450 and NADPH, right? Yes. So now this cholecalciferol gets converted to 25-hydroxy cholecalciferol by the enzyme 25-hydroxylase. right? 25 hydroxy cholecalciferol by the enzyme 25 hydroxylase in the liver, and this is the major storage form. All right. The next thing is it moves to the blood. In the blood, how is it being carried in the blood? Yes, it is carried with the help of a vitamin D binding protein. Yes or no? So it in the blood it is carried by vitamin D binding protein, and this vitamin D binding protein is alpha 2 globulin. Vitamin D binding protein is a alpha 2 globulin. Right, and the next thing is it moves to the it moves to the kidney. In kidney, what happens? In kidney it has the enzyme 1-alpha hydroxylase. And what is the purpose of this 1-alpha hydroxylase? 1-alpha hydroxylase, again few points on this 1-alpha hydroxylase. It's an enzyme present in your mitochondria, yes, of PCT, and then it helps in it uses cytochrome P450 and NADPH, yes, and it also has ferredoxin, and ferredoxin is a iron sulfur protein. So this is about your 1-alpha hydroxylase, and what does it get converted to? Your 25 hydroxy cholecalciferol gets converted to 125 dihydroxy cholecalciferol. Yes, so your 25 hydroxy cholecalciferol gets converted to 125 dihydroxy cholecalciferol. So there ends the pathway. So this is your active form. Yes, what is it? This is your active form of vitamin D. All right. Yes, so this is about the active form of vitamin D, which is 125 dihydroxy vitamin D3. Now, how does it enter into your cell? So you should know about the mechanism of action of this vitamin D3. So it acts like a hormone. Yes, vitamin D3 acts like a hormone. It is also, why do they call vitamin D3 as a hormone? Because of its mechanism of action. So now let us see about the mechanism of action here. Here what happens, this 125 dihydroxy vitamin D3 is also called as calcitriol. Yes, it also called as calcitriol. So this calcitriol, yes, enters your cells. Here it binds to a nuclear receptor. Yes, here it binds to a nuclear receptor. Now here, because it binds to a nuclear receptor, which is nothing but your vitamin D receptor, right? So calcitriol binds with the vitamin D receptor. As it binds to the vitamin D receptor, it heterodimerizes with the retinoid X receptor. Yes, so this calcitriol vitamin D receptor, retinoid X receptor. So why does it get heterodimerized? It goes and binds with the vitamin D response elements, which is present on your DNA. Yes, which is present on your DNA. So as it binds with the vitamin D response element of your DNA, it brings about transcription of the necessary genes that has to be induced by the vitamin D. Yes, so you all know what are all the different proteins that are induced by vitamin D, is it not? So you know the you need, for the intestinal absorption of calcium, you need calbindin. Yes, so this calbindin is a protein that has to be induced inside your intestinal cell. So how does it get induced? It is under the dependency of vitamin D. Now vitamin D enters your cell, it brings about transcription of these genes, and those genes will the transcription and translation of those genes will help in the production of the necessary proteins. Right, so this is how your vitamin D3 acts. So this is a mechanism of action of vitamin D3. So as you can see, this acts like a hormone. Yes, this acts like a hormone. That is why you call vitamin D3 as a hormone. All right, so next is, how does it get transported? So in the circulation, these variable forms like your vitamin the 25 hydroxy vitamin D, 125 dihydroxy vitamin D3, everything will bind with the vitamin D binding protein, as we had discussed before, right? And you can see only 0.4% of your 125 dihydroxy vitamin D is normally free, and that is going to be your active form, right? So this, as this transport of vitamin D is dependent on your vitamin D binding protein, this vitamin D binding protein in turn is influenced by certain characters, the levels of which increases during pregnancy or in the estrogen therapy, and the levels of which will decrease during nephrotic syndrome. So with that case also the free form is affected. Yes, so that is how you have to so these are the points that you have to remember, because these conditions can influence the levels of vitamin D binding protein, because in transport form your vitamin D fractions are all bound with the vitamin D binding protein, right? So the next one is we have to talk about, so thus we had talked about how the vitamin D is formed, how is it activated, yes, how it is transported across your blood, and what is the mechanism of action of vitamin D inside your cell. So now you have to know about the biological actions of vitamin D3, by which case you will understand how it maintains the calcium and phosphate concentrations. Yes, so in our question also it has been asked, how does it regulate the calcium and phosphorus levels in your body, is it not? So in that case you have to understand, so basically it will act on intestine, bone, kidney, and also parathyroid. So in these organs what happens because of vitamin D, that's what you have to know. In intestine it increases the calcium absorption from the intestine, also it increases the phosphorus absorption in your intestine. So it increases calcium and phosphorus absorption in your intestine. Yes, so how does it happen? So calcium absorption from the diet, how does it happen? The calcium enters, this is the lumen, so in the lumen, yes, so this is the lumen, so the calcium enters from the lumen, from the diet into the along the brush border. Yes, so it is mediated by an epithelial calcium channel. So by an epithelial calcium channel it enters, and the calcium will bind with the calbindin, right? Calbindin. So a calcium calbindin complex is being formed, and this exists along the basolateral membrane by a calcium ATPase. Yes, by a calcium ATPase. Yes, so how does it end? From the lumen it enters with the help of an epithelial calcium channel. Inside the mucosal cell it forms, intestinal mucosal cell, it forms a calcium calbindin complex, and then it leaves the cell by a calcium ATPase. So this is how this calbindin, all these steps, yes, all these steps are dependent on vitamin D. Yes, all these steps are dependent on vitamin D. Thus vitamin D helps in increasing the calcium and phosphorus absorption along the intestine. Alright, the next thing is, how does it act on bone? So here please listen carefully, you have another question that is being, for which you will find an answer here. So now in the bone what does it do? It will increase the bone resorption by inducing the monocytic stem cells in your bone marrow, right? So this in turn will induce the osteoclasts, right? And also it helps in inducing the osteoblasts. It stimulates the osteoblasts to produce cytokines, and that in turn will increase the osteoclasts, right? So in this case it causes so we all know osteoclast causes bone resorption, right? So vitamin D increases the bone resorption by these mechanism, by stimulating these osteoclasts. How does it stimulate osteoclasts? One thing is it increases the monocytic stem cells in the bone marrow. The other thing is it stimulates the osteoblasts. So this, along the membrane of the osteoblast you find the alkaline phosphatase. This is a bone specific alkaline phosphatase. So ALP is bone specific alkaline phosphatase, which is present here. So in the osteoblast as since ALP is an ectoenzyme, it is present on the membranes of your osteoblast. So whenever the osteoblasts are stimulated, the levels of ALP gets elevated, right? So not just ALP, even the levels of osteocalcin are elevated. So now this vitamin D is responsible for bone resorption, of course, and it also helps in bone mineralization, right? So depending on what the need is, So vitamin D helps in the bone remodeling. Yes, you should know that vitamin D helps in bone remodeling. Yes. Yes, so this is the reason. So they had in the question that we had discussed, what the question was, why is the level of ALP increase, for which you have an answer here, right? So this 125 dihydroxy vitamin D binds with the nuclear receptor. So how does it exerts its action in the bone? So in the target tissue, especially in the bones that we are talking about, it exerts its action like how we had discussed earlier. It forms a heterodimer. The calcitriol binds with vitamin D receptor inside the nucleus. So vitamin D receptor is a nuclear receptor that heterodimerizes with a retinoid X receptor. So this will combine with, or this will bind to the vitamin D response elements on the specific genes on your DNA. So that will help stimulate those genes and will bring about transcription of those genes, so that and translation of those will bring about the proteins which are responsible for the action of vitamin D, right? So this is how your vitamin D acts on the bone. The next organ that it acts is on the kidneys. So in the kidneys, what happens? It increases the calcium and phosphate reabsorption along the tubules of your kidneys. So here, whenever there is a adequate amount of 125 dihydroxy vitamin D, it has a short negative feedback mechanism by which it stops its production itself, right? So that happens in the kidney on the enzyme 1-alpha hydroxylase that we had discussed. 1-alpha hydroxylase is the final enzyme that is present in the kidney that will help in the formation or synthesis of the 125 dihydroxy vitamin D. So this vitamin D final active form has a tendency to regulate itself by the feedback mechanism, right? So by all these ways, by the ways by which vitamin D acts on intestine, bone and kidney, it will increase the levels of calcium and phosphate in your blood, is it not? So in the intestine, it had caused increase in the calcium phosphate calcium phosphate absorption from the diet, and in the bone it has increased bone resorption, so that it increases the calcium levels, and in kidney it is helping in the increase of calcium phosphate reabsorption along the tubules. So by all these ways, how does it maintain the calcium and phosphate concentrations? By acting on these organs, right? So next is what is its action on the parathyroid hormone. Parathyroid gland produces, of course, the parathyroid hormone. So this vitamin D will act on the parathyroid and it will inhibit the parathormone release. So when you have adequate amount of vitamin D in your blood, it will act on the parathyroid and it will inhibit the synthesis of parathormone. Why? Because parathormone will increase the 1-alpha hydroxylase. It stimulates the 1-alpha hydroxylase of your kidney. Thereby it increases the vitamin D synthesis. Alright, thereby it increases the vitamin D synthesis. So when you have adequate amount of vitamin D, you can just it will act on the parathyroid and inhibits the synthesis of parathormone, right? So whenever you have hypocalcemia, whenever the calcium level falls in your blood, what happens? Whenever there is hypocalcemia, you want to stimulate all the mechanisms that will increase the calcium in your serum calcium level. So thus this hypocalcemia will be sensed by your calcium sensing receptor in the parathyroid. Okay, this will be sensed by the calcium levels, sensed by the calcium sensing receptor in the parathyroid, and that will bring about the synthesis of parathormone. Yes, that will bring about the synthesis of parathormone, and that parathormone will increase the synthesis of vitamin D. So this vitamin D will help in bringing back the calcium levels to normal in your circulation, right? So as far as your parathormone or a parathyroid gland is normal, this the parathyroid gland is normal, your hypocalcium, the calcium levels can get normalized when this pathway occurs, right? So with this we are able to answer. With this we are able to answer our first question, which is the question that we had discussed. right? So we have seen how is vitamin D activated and how does the vitamin D regulate the calcium and phosphorus levels, and why does this deficiency causes a elevated parathormone and alkaline phosphatase. All right, yes. Thank you all, and see you again with another video, another high yield topic for you all of you guys, MBBS student guys, right? Thank you all.